He's ready. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the NFL Week 13 Ownership Show, presented by Prize Picks. Normally would be over my shoulder, but my TV hates me. I'm Eric Lindquist. You can follow me at Eric Lindquist over on Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. Really good stuff over there, putting losing betting tickets the last couple days and, just having an overall blast there. But you know what? We got some great stuff here at Odd Shopper. We got some great stuff here at Stokastic. And I got to say, I'm just ecstatic to be here specifically today because it's the return of the Eric Lindquist, Chris Spags shows that used to be, that was the beginning of my time here at Osmo/Stokastic. And God, go follow him at Chris Spags. He's doing great stuff for Splash Play. He is an awesome just dude. And I'm just happy and I'm emotional now. How you doing, Chris?
Excited to be here. I know woke up to the tweet from Eric posting a tough run in betting, which happens. That's what profitability looks like. You have your ebbs and flows. So I'm saying that's Eric as much as you guys out there, but was excited to see that tweet, excited to be doing the show with Eric today. And I know you said you wanted to see one of your nearest and dearest friends on stream for a while. So here, welcome back. Great to see you on here. Heard you've been having a tough time in the world of betting, but don't you worry. You keep getting back up there. You're dunking in your thumbnails. You got your Lindy's locks. And by the way, here's my crotch.
Oh my!
That's for Greg more than anything. Mwah, mwah, Greg. You're a great boss. Mwah.
Jordan Klein is just cheesing. Well, we're back.
Balls often enough on shows.
I think we should put some context out there in case people don't know my guy, Chris. Chris was here long before me. He helped and showed me the ropes here. And, he decided to also, just like everybody else here at Stokastic, make fun of me on the daily. And as such, he came up with Puppet Lindquist. He's not just some weirdo over there who's just pulling down, puppet dicks and stuff, but
well, maybe it could be both, a little bit of both. But there was once a time for the people who are new to Stokastic, and Stokastic has grown so much over the years. But there was a period where we had to do a show daily, which was just basically various hosts rotating in and roasting Eric and making it like difficult, which I missed the tip off daily. Great show. I think that we really played at the studio space on that one is what I would say.
We did. We took leaps. We took shots out in the dark. And again, that's one of the beautiful things about my friend Chris over there. Again, if you haven't seen Splash Play, the guy is doing great best ball content pretty much every day. It seems like you're firing something up over there, over on Splash Play. Go give that a follow over on the YouTubes. Check him out over on the Twitters. He's just doing awesome work all around. And again, just a charming fellow, as you will learn over the next hour or so. So we got Jordan Klein here producing as well. Excited to talk a little Week 13 football. Week 12, how did that go for you?
Week 12 was an interesting one for me because I had some lineups that I really thought I nailed things on where was really going aggressively after Indianapolis, Tampa Bay. So I had some Pittman, Taylor, Mike Evans lineups that I was like, this is it, man. This is it. And then you get to the afternoon, it's like you don't have Josh Allen, you don't have Kyron Williams, and that exact same duo, you're just not going to get there. So it was one of those things where it's showdown too, Thanksgiving, like I've been really hitting on like the macro takes, which makes me feel good as a content creator. Mm-hmm. But then when your play doesn't match up all the parts of a lineup together, I feel like that's kind of the pain point, but that's where the ownership, that's where the sims come in. And at certain points they do line up. And that's what we're hoping to hit in lucky Week 13.
Yeah. My three highest owned players last week, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp. I did not enjoy the fact that 2 and 3 couldn't get there the same way. And you obviously needed Higbee, Stafford. That wasn't a terrible combination to run into. Josh Allen single, though, and that leads us into the Millie here. On the ownership show, we're going to go running back, wide receiver, tight end. We're going to head out with top stacks, talk about everything that we're looking forward to here for Sunday. But first, we recap Week 12, looking at the Millie Maker lineup. And I know there's been a lot of conversations on the Twitters. And, Chris, you've been doing DFS with me here forever as well. We've had conversations about what makes a good lineup, what doesn't make a good lineup. This Millie Maker lineup, as you look at it, Jordan Klein pulling that up on the screen. Yes, no, maybe so. Maybe. Cool. We'll be able to fire it up. What do you think about an unstacked Josh Allen? Because I think this is back-to-back weeks now where we had unstacked Brock Purdy, followed by unstacked Mr. just completely naked Josh Allen. Not naked like Puppet Lindquist, but kind of like that. What do you think about a lineup like this that you see when you have Josh Allen? You talked about Kyron Williams, Jerome Ford, Nico Collins, Calvin Ridley, Rashee Rice, who went nuts, Pat Freiermuth, new situation, Ramondre Stevenson, Panthers. What does that lineup scream to you?
I think it's interesting. I think people are going to chase this a little bit too much. And, Eric mentioned some of the stuff I do in best ball. There's a lot of pushback in best ball this year from people saying, maybe you don't need to stack and correlate. Maybe you could just pick the best players or the best projected players and try to make it work. I fundamentally don't agree with that. Like, I do think that for the most part, you're trying to thread a needle that's already impossible to thread. And the way you do that and have some success is like correlating, double stacking, having bringbacks, maybe a little bit less so. I think that's enough back testing has shown that's maybe not as valuable as we treated it as. But I see the seam and it's like, I get it. I get how it wins. But I feel like if people start playing more lineups like this, you're just going to hemorrhage money because you're just playing off of median outcomes. And it's never going to work out, I think, over the course of like playing 17 weeks, 18 weeks of a year.
Did you see what the top team is in BBM4 right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 0 RB team. I know that.
Yeah.
But it's not very stacked, I don't think.
Yeah, so Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs is a skinny, followed by just everything that you could possibly want to have be the stone cold nuts. I guess James Cook is in that build as well. But 0 RB, you talked about it, where, yeah, it's a thin needle to thread. And, best ball, it's one thing, but Brock Purdy is the other quarterback in that lineup. You know how many pieces there are in BBM4 for that lineup? 0. It is Brock Purdy by himself. No other piece. And so I find it ironic that Josh Allen, Brock Purdy, the last 2 Millie Maker winners, are also the 2 quarterbacks up there, unstacked there in best ball as well. But I've gone back and forth here. I was a little bit harsh, I think, yesterday talking with Andy and friends on the Andy Francis show, and thought that it was a pretty terrible deal to play Josh Allen unstacked purely because Stephon Diggs, we know what that upside can be with him, but then also you had cheap receivers. You had a tight end option there in Kincaid that was in the mid 5s and doable. You had 5,300 Gabe Davis, who would have been the best of everybody. You had a popular Khalil Shakira, but like, I don't know about Brock Purdy because like there's expensive pieces to anybody who could have those singular touchdowns like you saw against Jacksonville, where everybody got a piece except for Christian McCaffrey. So it's just one of those things that there's this ever-changing thing, and it's like it just needs to work out one week for you. But I'm still of the belief that I want to be stacking week in, week out, at least one guy with my quarterback, unless it's just such a clear-cut underpricing of a rushing quarterback or something. Like, I don't know, a situation when you run into Malik Mills this season, God forbid, or Malik Willis, excuse me. How are you feeling though about stacking going forward? Because again, these feel like 2 big outliers to me.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way about that. I mean, you could go a couple of weeks ago, and it's Utica, who's one of the best DFS players in the world. He, Osimo, some of the greats out there, whoever else, whistles go woo. I don't know who else I'm supposed to name here before somebody gets offended, because you say any great DFS player, you have to list them all out or they all come for you. But I think that's the thing that stands out to me is like the great players are triple stacking, they're double stacking there. Utica's lineup had one where he was fading Nico Collins, but he had a triple stack of the other Texans with the assumption then that the chalk is going to fail for Nico Collins. Those other 3 guys are what pulls it away. That's how you should be playing DFS. That said, I'm not going to like shit on a Millie Maker winner, but I think short gamers win to me, obviously was a higher dollar Millie Maker. That was more impressive because it was a stacked team. It was a correlated team. It had mini stacks and like everything going for it. And I think that's how you're going to win more over the course of time. But I kind of like, I hope the field plays lineups like this because they're not going to make it. It's not going to work out that well. And then the 1 out of 100,000 times it happens, we've seen that now the past 2 weeks. And maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe it's just that people don't play those lineups enough. But I personally feel like the lineups could have been better if they had that 1 stack in there, even if it's a skinny. But if it's a double, there's still been stacks available that they could have had.
Yeah, we've seen that a little bit small field baseball. I know people pay attention to MLB DFS ever, but there was a time where every single lineup was stacked. And then there were guys who came in and would just play top projected bats and spots and were making some money. And there were times that I remember talking with Osimo back in the day, our guy, Alex Baker, father himself, crushing the streets in fatherhood. And then
I don't know how he's doing that, by the way, man. Like, he's early in the baby cycle and he's still out putting out 100K wins. But like he's the most
he smashing. Man. Can you get out of the Rainmaker streets? Can you just let me have UFC Rainmakers this weekend, please? They increased it 7.5K for the elite. Alex, take a weekend off. That would be awesome for me. But I'm looking, maybe I go to the Apex on Saturday because I'll be in Vegas. But anyway, that's beside the point. We'll pull up the SPY here too as we're moving to it. But what I'm getting at, MLB DFS, if everybody's stacking, it definitely does behoove you not to stack, but we're not seeing that enough here in the data to really justify going completely nuts for it. So enjoy seeing those lineups. Congratulations. I'm not going to shit on a Millie Maker winner because you get to keep that money. I don't have that money. So that's really enjoyable for you. But as we're looking at the SPY, similar deal. Josh Allen, Kyron Williams, you're going to need both of them. Derrick Henry on the back of 2 touchdowns, not a lot else with it. Devonta Smith, really nice outing there in correlation with the Gabe Davis. I like this lineup a lot more. Gabe Davis, skinny. Devonta Smith, Khalil Shakir, so it's actually a double there. Chiefs defense, super chalky, but did just enough to just exist. SPY winner. Really like that lineup.
Yeah, I think that's the thing we've seen again. Osmo has won a SPY before with, believe, a QB plus 2 or 3 with 2 bringbacks, so like a full game stack. And for the smaller field, higher stakes stuff, you do want to correlate. And again, that speaks to where, higher stakes, like I know people, I don't play high stakes. Like I'd like to max out the big turnings if I can, or if not, put in enough entries to a Millie Maker and then max out the 20 maxes and the mini max. Like that's how I like to play. That said, like, for the high stakes stuff, it is a lot of the sharpest players in the world coming together. And what are they doing? They're stacking and correlating because that's how you kind of win those fields the most. And I would say that's the main thing to keep in mind. Obviously, for the Millie Maker, it is a dice roll. It is the equivalent of roulette. So that's sort of how that goes. But
love roulette.
But you still want to go in with the right approach, I think. And even though you can win with those kind of entries that are unstacked and all of that, like this one, the SPY, is how the best players win. And I think you want to play like the best players as long as you are doing the work. Like a lot of people who are watching the stream are.
Yeah, I'm taking, this is going to sound strange first time I said it, but I'm taking my mother-in-law to Vegas tomorrow, which I'm very, very excited for.
Strip clubs.
For the yeah, that's exactly it. Pac-12 championship, but also there is no chance that I'm not taking her over to our roulette table and teaching her the great joys of 4, 19, 23, and 33. It's going to be a glorious time. Can't wait. 4 numbers, play them straight across. We'll add her birthday to the fray. That'll be fun. I think she's on the 2nd. Yeah, so that's on Saturday. Going to be good times. But Jordan Klein, thank you pulling those up. Great stuff. But hey, we're done with that. If you guys end up winning a Millie Maker, guess what? You're also going to be able to jump into the Osmo/Stokastic. See, I was bringing up Osmo on our history there. Stokastic, HOF, baby. Yeah, Hall of Fame action. Download the avatar at stokastic.com/avatar. Place in the top 3 in any contest, over 5,000 entrants, and then tweet that win. Get yourself a free month of a Stokastic package. Yes, any of the data packages. May I suggest the Sims Max? Get everything that we have behind the curtain. Check it all out. Again, the Sims smashing in the NBA streets, smashing in the NFL streets all season long, and MLB. Oh, it's going to be a long time till those streets show up again, but excited to bring this to you guys. If you finish in the top 3, awesome. More than just the money, which is fantastic, but that free month of a Sims package. Cool. Great, grand, no yelling on the bus. My guy, Chris Spags, ready to talk a little football?
Oh, I'm dying for it.
I'm dying for it too. Let's do it. Running back position, we go. And the conversation just begins, starts, ends. I mean, maybe he's the only guy anybody wants to talk about here on a Thursday leading into Sunday, but Zach frickin' Moss. 4,600. We got news that Jonathan Taylor's having surgery on a thumb that I didn't even see him hurt or hear about him hurting. But all of a sudden, Zach Moss has become a real thing. Now, there have been multiple times this season that running backs, cheap running backs specifically, have been chalk going up against the Tennessee defense. And well, until Jerome Ford in a weird spot, it didn't really come to fruition for any of them. He's got a 67.5 rushing prop across the industry right now. That's something that I use as kind of a baseline. And you assume that he has, 80, 90% of the touches here. 4,600, it's an outlier price tag. I don't know how you get away from it in cash, but in tournaments, how do you plan to utilize Zach Moss at 4,600 against this normally run funnel Tennessee defense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see what the field's ownership is because I do think there's a lot of excitement to plug in Zach Moss. He's finally, a cheap running back with a starter's role. But we do remember earlier in the year, and this is something I was talking about with Ben Rassa earlier in the week, filling in for Laffy, where there was a week where Jamal Williams was the chalk against Tennessee. Everybody was there, and that went extremely poorly. So I'm wondering if that keeps that Zach Moss in play a little bit more. But at 38% ownership, I get it. I think on the year, he's been better than Jonathan Taylor. He has a higher avoided tackle rate, 17% compared to 14%. He's also a little bit better in EPA per pass, 9.19 compared to 0.17, a little better in EPA per rush, negative 0.02 compared to negative 0.05. So you are getting Jonathan Taylor, but maybe a hair better with a more consolidated workload, and getting him, for cheap, I think is hard to ignore. That's the tournament theory of it. You're not going to be able to pivot at the price point. But let's say you pay up for McCaffrey, you pay up for a 6K guy, a 7K guy, you're definitely getting off the beaten path of how the entire field is building. So I think that does have some game theory merits, but in terms of just the price tag and the role, like Moss is already playing high leverage situations for the Colts. He was playing third and longs. He was playing some short down and distance plays for the Colts in that last game, which again, I watched heavily because I was deeply invested in it. So Zach Moss has been involved. They like him. They trust him. He's not Deion Jackson. He is a good player. But I think if the ownership is like 50-60, it's probably getting closer to the wrong play. But with the price tag, the Sims might still push you there. And I guess I would just take what the Sims give me.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about ownership. When we look at the ownership numbers, and I think maybe since we've been doing the ownership show, Luffy and I used to be going game by game, 2 hours, just an absolute war here on Thursdays, but a little bit easier here on the schedule as we've delved into a lot of betting content. But looking at the running back position and looking at this ownership, you got to remember it's in the milli maker. And as you move up in stakes or as you shorten the field, as you go to like 4,000, 5,000 entries, I can't imagine that he's going to be lower than 37.8% at 4,600. And I'm going to trust the Sims to be able to really help me for the large field type tournaments. And maybe it is something where I just completely flip the build, go to the mid range, because the 5-6K range has been awfully fruitful all season long. And there's going to be outlier spots throughout the entire board, whether it's McCaffrey in the top of the end or somebody there, I doubt below Zach Moss, but like Zach Moss for sure, 4,600, an important piece to pay attention to the ownership. I don't think it's just as easy though as saying, oh, if he's going to be 50%, I'm going to fade him. If he's going to be 25%, I'm going to jam him. There are lots of ways to build good lineups with Zach Moss in them or out of them, I think is probably the best way of looking at it. So I'm going to be trusting the Sims quite a bit here, but outside of Zach Moss, there are some other guys pulling some ownership, and Christian McCaffrey, Rashad White, who generally has that passing down role, Javonte Williams, 5,700, a Denver team that comes in as a road dog against Houston, playing some really good football, especially on the defensive side of things. Javonte Williams, I'd like to see those snaps come up a little bit. Rashad White freaked everybody out getting added to the injury report last Saturday, and then McCaffrey, well, fuck, he's good. How are we feeling about these chalky batch of running backs?
So normally in a week where you do have the chalk running back being, obviously Zach Moss is 4,600, but being 5K, being low 6K, I like to go to McCaffrey because you're just getting off the beaten path then and forcing in a player that is going to get at least 18, probably closer to 25 a game. And, you have the shot too of him getting over 40, which has only happened, I believe, once this year, but he's in his bag, obviously, if it were to happen. But because McCaffrey is going to be so chalky as well, I don't think that's a play. I imagine you'll see a lot of Zach Moss plus McCaffrey lineups, which, tells you a pretty big tail then. That probably means those lineups are not paying for Tyreek or Keenan Allen at wide receiver. So I think that, I'm willing to take whatever the Sims give me for the most part. One thing that stuck out to me a couple of weeks ago was when the Raheem Mostert slate, where I think they were going against Carolina. Everybody played Raheem Mostert. He smashed as he kind of should have with no other backs taking touches away. And then the lineups that had the best performances were ones that had, they just crammed in Mostert anyway. Just said, I'm going to have 90%, 95%, 100% Raheem Mostert. I kind of wonder if that's the case this week, where you just say, I'll take all the Zach Moss and I'll hope I get unique around that. Because the rest of the guys like Javonte Williams, I think Denver's defense sucks. I know people feel differently about that, but they just keep getting lucky every week. It's like passes off somebody's hand. Like the QB is flustered and throws a pick that he would normally never throw. And it just keeps happening every week. Or they play Cleveland and it's like, we're getting PJ Walker filling in for DTR after DTR just strafes them on a drive. I think that Houston destroys them, which is not going to be good for Javonte Williams. But I think for all these other running backs, like they're all just kind of mid, and Zach Moss is cheap. So I feel like he's clearly a cut above in every possible way, besides, the fundamental matchup, I guess, against Tennessee.
Man, I didn't really think about it from that perspective. Josh Dobbs, obviously, in the rearview mirror after whatever that debacle we just saw rip to my Minnesota Vikings against the Bears on Monday night. But after that debacle, I think in hindsight, maybe the Josh Dobbs outing doesn't look as good for the Denver defense. I get that. But the one thing I keep coming back to with this spot, the Broncos have had the 7th most difficult strength of schedule adjusted, according to PFF. Houston's at 27th. They've had a pretty good run of drawing some pretty dead teams, whether it was the Saints, where, the Saints, the Falcons, the Saints, week 6, that was Carolina, Tampa, Cincy, where that was a fantastic win with a healthy Joe Burrow, no doubt about it. And then Arizona. You saw them against Jacksonville. Jacksonville's been, 8-3 against the spread, pretty fair valued. Texans 6-5, 5-6 against the spread, pretty fair value. I feel as though Denver can be competitive here. It's just more of like, does Javonte Williams ever get a majority of the work in like a 60-65% type share? Because it feels like in the passing game, especially when you're a road dog here in this spot, you might see a healthier dosage of Samaje Perine. Jaleel McLaughlin isn't really a thing the way that people thought he might be in the last couple of weeks, but it's just 5,700. It's more of like the price point that has me like thinking about it, but that's because there's guys above here that I think we might not even have to think about it. Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson. That's going to be kind of like a little bit of an interesting point for me. 6,700, identical piece for both of them. It's not as easy as going in the player compare tool. It's just like, what do we think Jahmyr Gibbs in a neutral game script is going to look like from a workload perspective? They got down big time to Green Bay last week. You saw 67% of the snaps there, less than 30% for David Montgomery on the other side. I don't think we see that in a neutral game script, but maybe I'm wrong. You're seeing a lot more ownership come in for Jahmyr Gibbs than Bijan Robinson, and that has me interested in maybe taking that shot on Bijan coming off of the heat check that he got from Arthur Smith last week. Gets the 2 tutties, completely smashes. I know nobody wants to play people against the Jets defense, but running the ball hasn't been too bad. 30th against the position. I feel all right about Bijan Robinson this week, and I haven't said that since probably week 2.
Yeah, Bijan's one of those guys I feel like I get because of the projection and obviously the ceiling outcomes, the range of outcomes for him on the Sims. Always going to look pretty good. And actually had one of my best lineups last week was a Bijan lineup. Then, of course, Kyron came over the top and made that completely useless. But I think Bijan's a fine play. Like, I personally believe if you're, even if you're playing Zach Moss, I think it's a pure kind of roll the dice week. Whoever's going to come up in the projections, get different combos. Because none of these guys are like, Gibbs, not the greatest matchup, like Eric mentioned. I do think game script wise, it should be a little bit more of a Montgomery spot just because I expect it to be a competitive game. New Orleans doesn't have a lot of horses on their side left. Like, we're probably not going to see Rashid Shaheed. Michael Thomas is out. There's a chance Olave doesn't go, though he's back in practice. A little bit odd how the concussion protocol has gone this year, so he could play. But if he doesn't, it's like that's a Montgomery spot, I think, by a pretty wide margin. So I'm willing to take whoever comes here, and I would think that based off of how it goes and the low ownership, I would say Bijan stands out, Montgomery stands out, and maybe Kyron is like a contrarian play because if people aren't going to chase that game, obviously Cleveland's a terrible matchup, but the Rams could get there against Cleveland. And if Kyron somehow really beats this tough defense, he's going to be under 5% owned. And we know he just put up 40 last week.
Yeah, that's not a bad call. 7,200, you get the price increase coming into the Cleveland matchup. That should reduce ownership even further. But I got to bring it over to Miami here because everybody is asking about Miami. Is Raheem Mostert really coming in under 6%? That's from Justin. Good to see you, my guy. Depends on Achane probably. Achane limited in practice, but should be a go more than likely. I think he's probably closer to playing. Those are 2 breakneck speed dudes coming into the same backfield. And then I think you just have to talk about it from a leverage perspective. Miami, 24.3% top stack percentage, double that of Philly, which is second in our top stacks tool. This is direct leverage, I think, off of some of those passing game pieces that you want to get against Washington. Then I'm sure I'm going to roster against Washington when we get to the top stacks portion and wide receiver portion of this program. But what do you think about the Miami backfield, which is one that is it's won people some money this season, definitely pre-Achane injury.
Yeah, I worry about Achane coming back in. I mean, like, just because of what it means for Raheem Mostert, and also like Achane is like a tremendous back, like a guy who's shown a lot of juice in terms of both his avoided tackle rate, in terms of the EPA metrics, in terms of just breaking long plays over and over again. Obviously, those all kind of go hand in hand. But with Mostert, like, we see what he's been where, even against the Jets. So Eric mentioned the Jets aren't a great run defense, but they are still a good defense overall. And Mostert put up an easy 20 points against them. And that was with, I believe, a touchdown being vultured away in that one, or at least some touches being vultured away by Jeff Wilson for sure. So in the spot, I think you should probably be wanting to play a Miami running back just because they're going against the Commanders. You know what the Commanders do. The Commanders, there was something I saw on Twitter too, where basically the Commanders are like the only team. I think they're giving up 7 points more than the implied totals every week on average. So like you're talking about potentially what Miami puts up 35. Like there's got to be 2, maybe 3 rushing touchdowns in there. So I think getting a Miami running back is certainly a good play. The price tag is tough. I think the projections aren't going to align that well. And that's why Raheem Mostert is projecting for so little ownership. But if that somehow is a contrarian play, I think that's a really strong one to go to because they should put a lot of points up on the Commanders, and Howell's not going to give up either. So that's a positive sign. I think to keep the starters in and hope that they actually get the upside.
All right, 2 more chalkier pieces that we'll talk about before we get to your favorite tournament plays that we can take some shots on. sub 6, 8%. People really want those low owned tournament plays, but Ramondre Stevenson versus Breece Hall, they're both low sixes. They're both on terrible football teams in their current iterations. Maybe Aaron Rodgers gets his Achilles healed by God and shows up, but that doesn't seem very likely to me this season. And then Ramondre Stevenson, 6K there. You're probably getting Bailey Zappi starting at quarterback here for the New England Patriots. I know for whatever reason, Bill Belichick doesn't want to tell us something that we already know, which is Mac Jones sucks and that Bailey Zappi is probably going to start. But such is life. Ramondre Stevenson against a Chargers defense that isn't exactly adding a lot to the table either. Do you have a pick between these two pieces pulling between 15 and 18% ownership?
Who would be the other one with Ramondre?
Ramondre and Breece Hall.
Oh, yeah, I would favor Ramondre in that one. I think the Chargers are just so soft against everything, and it does feel like Ramondre consolidated some pass game work for himself. Zeke's been an albatross for sure for Ramondre on the year. And I do worry about Zappi. Like, I know we hate Mac Jones, or, everybody kind of seems to hate Mac Jones. I feel bad for Mac Jones. I feel like he's gotten the worst outlay of bad coaching and then bad situations. And then the team this year is clearly not equipped on either side of the ball. The talent around him sucks. But that said, like, I think he's better than Bailey Zappi. So I kind of worry about Ramondre's ability to get going. But that said, he is a running back. So, like, the thing with backup QBs that I always try to say when doing content is like, backup QBs can't get the ball outside. That's why they're backup QBs. They can't get the ball to the boundary receivers. So they target the tight end a lot more. And then, in some cases, will target the running back a little bit more. So for Ramondre, like, he could benefit and get a lot of PPR touches and be there. Absolutely. I would say I would favor Ramondre over Breece. I'd favor Ramondre over Javonte, I think, unless you're playing a contrarian Houston Texans don't go off kind of build. I think Ramondre's probably, relative to price, like my number 2 favorite back on the slate. And I'm not a Ramondre guy. I loved him in best ball last year at pick 100, pick 120. This year he was going, I thought was stupid. But where he is right now, 6K salary, good matchup against the Chargers. As long as New England doesn't get completely dusted, like, Ramondre's probably gonna have a pretty good day.
Yeah, as soon as Ezekiel Elliott got signed, I'm pretty positive I had zero interest in Ramondre Stevenson in best ball. If he fell into a couple of builds for me early on there, I would have understood it. But yeah, the whole Zeke thing is just so dumb. I don't quite understand. But hey, you got to have somebody else, I suppose. And it's just, maybe it's the name recognition thing. It's not like Zeke's playing some major prominent role. Ramondre back-to-back weeks with 20 plus touches. So that's kind of what you're looking for out of him. Been a little bit more efficient on the ground as well. 4.4, 4.7 yards per carry in those. 9.7 there in week 9 against Washington. Nice to see that come to the table. But Pittsburgh, Matt Canada, he is no more. Jaylen Warren was going to be unleashed until he wasn't, decided to fumble it. Najee Harris, 5,200 Najee Harris. These guys have been priced right about the same constantly. And now you're running into the best matchup that they've had in quite some time, going up against Arizona on the road in Cincy, on the road in Cleveland. Yeah, Green Bay was good, and that was a nifty one for Jaylen Warren. But, like, both of these guys are pulling top 12 RB ownership right now. That is wild to see, but new offense, new construction. Arizona pretty depleted on the offensive end. I'm not sure this really has any shootout potential. If you're seeing a Trey McBride being dinged up, if you see Greg Dortch and all these other guys that missed practice on Wednesday get a little bit shaky come Sunday. But how do you feel about Jaylen Warren plus Najee Harris here in this spot against Arizona?
I think it's tough because it is a pure 50-50 split. Like, I do love Jaylen Warren for like a best ball format where you can kind of set it and forget it. And if he has a great day, or if he has a day that props you up against other running backs, like, great. If he doesn't get there, then it doesn't hurt you. For DFS, like, I wasn't on him as a chalk play last week. I know you had kind of talked about him on Live Before Lock and we're a little bit more pro, I believe. But, like, I think he's a great player.
I hate myself
I just
for it, by the way.
Yeah. So, like, the Najee part of it just sucks. Like, Najee still is not good, I would say, by the traditional sense, but he is better than he was last year, though the offensive line, I think, gets a lot of that credit. Offensive line is like such an important part of this equation, where Josh Jacobs, like, the offensive line is worse this year. And even though he's getting 20 touches a game, it's like, that's what's propping up. It's not that he's good. He's got 1/3 of the avoided tackles. He's not getting into space quite as well. So for the Steelers, like, that's what's driving them both. I think they're both valid plays. I personally think Jaylen Warren's a better play because we saw him get a little more target work. Obviously, the PPR points on DraftKings is going to be more important. But in terms of touchdown equity, Najee has a little bit more. Like, Jaylen Warren has to get out from outside the red zone, basically. So I think they both have their merits, and I'm okay playing both because Arizona's a really nice matchup. And to the point that I talked about it with Ben, like, I'm willing to do Kenny Pickett stacks this week because Arizona's just so soft. And if there is a bounce back, a dead cat bounce for the Steelers offense after they changed everything over, this could be it, because this is like one of the best matchups in football besides the Commanders.
Yeah, this is the cheaper version of Gibbs Montgomery to me. I would have interest in Gibbs Montgomery if I could guess something beyond 50-50, but I can't. And this one I can't either, but at least they're cheaper. And they're going up against a better spot here in Arizona at home. Pittsburgh being at home, that is. I feel pretty good about taking shots on them yet again. I feel like I've been overweight to one or the other every week for like a month. It's not a fun feeling. And getting 18 or 20 from Jaylen Warren when he was sub 5K, that was a lot of fun. 5,400, we're starting to get there. We're starting to get to a little bit of an issue, but I do like what we saw from the offense. They're just actually proactively throwing the football and trying to score points. That's good to see from a Pittsburgh offense. So Jaylen Warren, Najee Harris, didn't know if you had any preference. I think it's kind of hard to. It's hard to have an opinion. So I guess my opinion will be, who can I get into lineups more and who's going to be lower owned to some extent? Should be fun to track.
I would also say too that they're probably the most live price point pivots to Zach Moss, just relative to everybody else on the slate. And honestly, you want to get weird with it. I would not recommend this doing for a large portion of the portfolio, but you play them both and then you see how that goes. If you want to, because they are getting enough of a workload and they both have defined enough roles where Warren gets 7 targets and catches 6 of them and then maybe gets 1 touchdown. Najee gets 2. That's how you beat the Pittsburgh stack. I think there's something interesting there. I don't know that I would want to play it a lot, but just a thought exercise here on the ownership show.
Yeah. There was another thought exercise I had was thinking about Carolina, and then I reminded that I don't hate myself. I was looking at Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders. Do you know how many carries they each had specifically last week?
It was dead even, right? I don't know.
14 and 15 apiece. I did not see in the range of outcomes after the firing of Frank Reich 15 carries coming for Miles Sanders, but alas, I suppose he's the one who got paid. Chuba Hubbard, he's been the better back, no doubt about it. He ends up having the passing game work against Tennessee, puts up the 20 spot. Would have been crazy contrarian there, I think, on that slate. But I mean, I don't know if this is going to be a 50-50 thing here, but I'm not going to rely on 15 touches for Miles Sanders coming down the pipeline anytime soon. Thank God it's Tampa Bay, where at least, from a running perspective, they've been second best in the NFL against running backs this season from a fantasy perspective. So I can kind of pump the brakes a little bit there. But as we round out the running back position, smash the like button because Spags is about to give you goodness. I don't know what that goodness is going to be, but who is your favorite running back to roster? We're going to give you under 10% here on this slate. If it can be somebody we've talked about, it can be somebody that you really want to highlight, but we're going to get out of running back, move on to wide receiver. Who do the people need to know is going to smash on Sunday?
I mean, I think it's got to be Mostert or Achane. I would probably favor Mostert just because of the knee stuff. I think Achane probably gets limited touch-wise, maybe closer to 10 to 15 as a max. But I think one of those guys is going to go off, and I think there's a 2-touchdown day. And I would say I'd probably go for Mostert. Right now, he's projected for under 1% ownership. If he's 1% owned, I would play Raheem Mostert and not have an issue with it. So it's too good of a matchup against Washington. I feel the same way about that as I do about Steelers backs that we talked about.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the wide receivers. They're going to be popular, as they should be. Washington, they are fruitful when it comes to that good stuff. But again, smash the like button for our sponsor, Prize Picks. Going to be good stuff checking out Prize Picks here. If you're in a non-legal betting state, if you have an opportunity to jump on Prize Picks, lots of states where there is legalized betting and Prize Picks in conjunction. I was just in New York City. It was phenomenal to have everything at my behest. My fingertips. There they are. I had to find a little bit of that. Johnny, oh man, that's a great documentary for what it's worth. But Prize Picks. Oh my God.
Here at my fingertips. Anyway, Prize Picks, a great app you could go to. I love Taco Tuesday.
Yep, Taco Tuesday is a lot of fun. Even on Thursdays, it could be Public Lindquist Thursdays. I think Jordan Klein just loving having it back. I kind of love it, kind of hate it. It's kind of both, but I definitely love everything about Prize Picks because you're getting fixed payouts coming into it. I play a ton over there. It's absolutely fantastic. And you can play across multiple sports. We have tools over at OddsShopper that can help you really go out there and find an edge. You have correlation that you can put into your lineups. You can look at Thursday night football in conjunction with Monday night football. You can play things across multiple sports, multiple different types of variations, whether it's pass completions, kicking points, punts. There are so many small edges that you can find at multiple spots throughout Prize Picks. But with this fixed payout structure, whether it's 2, 4, 6, doesn't matter what it is, it remains the same. So yes, you can play 2 through 6 players in one card, fire it up, win up to 25x your money, and Again, lots of fun. I'm going to be doing a ton of content here coming very shortly for Prize Picks. Excited to bring that to you, but get a head start, get $100 first match deposit bonus, as well as all of those odd shopper tools I talked about. We have the fantasy optimizer for it, the Prize Picks optimizer. Just look at expected win percentage at the top of the page. You're going to get 1 month when you sign up over at Prize Picks to be able to try that out for the very first time. For the first time. I had to sing a little bit for Spags, but fire it up. Look at the chat there. Prize Picks stuff. God, why did I pick that song of all songs? But Prize Picks, friends, phenomenal stuff week in, week out, day in, day out. Check them out. Sponsor of our program. Thank you so much to them. To the wide receiver position we go. Oh, my Lord. Tyreek Hill, how you doing this fine day, sir? 24.9% ownership, the highest owned by nearly, 8.5%? Holy mother of God, 9,600 Tyreek Hill, most expensive, but most owned because his role is absurd. And also the Hard Knocks is fantastic, so he's probably getting the Hard Knocks bump if I had to guess. No, he's not. It's just Tyreek Hill's good. How are you feeling about him against this Washington defense that we said they're the worst in the NFL against wide receivers?
Yeah, I mean, I love Tyreek in the spot. I think it's a little bit different than it was a couple of years ago with Cooper Kupp, where Cooper Kupp was priced around 10K for so many slates, and he still kept smashing because he was getting 10, 15 targets, 100, 150 yards every game, a touchdown or two. That was worth the price tag because the floor was there. I think Tyreek's floor is a little bit more elusive, but he also has the ceiling to put up 45. I would say he could crest past 50 in this spot if they really were to go to him heavy and were to say, all right, let's get you the 2K yards. Like, let's just make it so this is the game where you're going to have safe sailing here. If we don't want to play you down the home stretch, maybe as we run away with the AFC East, we don't have to. I think that's a possibility where just put out one big outlier game. And frankly, I know that wide receivers can't win MVP. Tyreek should be an MVP contender, shouldn't he?
Yeah, he 100% should. He changes the complexion of your team. And even on a week last week where you saw Tua struggle, Tua legitimately struggled against the Jets. A lot of quarterbacks struggle against the Jets. But Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert, and what Mike McDaniel does with these players is he finds open space and he just lets them create. And it's almost like a guy who's coaching a rec basketball league. It's just in football form. It's just these guys that are having a lot of joy playing this game in the backyard, doing the thing, getting in motion nonstop. And the way that they use motion for Tyreek Hill is just so Incredible. He finds space every single time. And then he's got great hands. He really doesn't make mistakes route running. He's just the best wide receiver in the NFL at 9,600 in the best spot you can ask for in the NFL. So I think the ownership, in years past would have seen this and said, oh, I can't play Tyreek Hill. I can't do it. I have to play Keenan Allen at 9K against New England on the road, or I got to do. No. Tyreek Hill is in an unfadeable spot if you're playing more than one lineup.
Yeah, I agree. I think Tyreek, Tyreek and Zach Moss are going to be a popular combo. So you have to figure out how do you get different amidst that. Is that playing one of the Miami running backs? I think where the ownership is right now, it's what I would say. Could also be stacking up an expensive Tua. I think that's a little bit less appealing, but Tyreek's just too good. The opportunity's too good. The upside's too good. So I would not opt for a strict fade here. It's easier to fade, I think, a wide receiver than it is a running back for the most part, because you have other guys who can hit that ceiling. But it really is like Keenan Allen versus Tyreek. And I personally would not want to bet against Tyreek in this matchup where he might break off a pair of 50-yard touchdowns that it just wouldn't shock me.
It would not shock me at all. It would be the scariest fade to just sit there with zero Tyreek Hill. I don't know. Again, it's hard to know where I'm going to land come Sunday. There's so many variables, so many things that go into the Sims tool. And when you're simulating out your lineups, where you have some injury news that'll definitely help us figure out, hey, how much value do we have here at the bottom end of the wide receiver pool? Because running back, we already have it. We already have a Zach Moss piece that makes it accessible to get to Tyreek Hill and not feel as though, you're treading water. So I really like that spot for him. I think you said you had a lot of Indy Tampa Bay last week, correct?
Yep.
Well, how about Michael Pittman, Josh Downs against Tennessee? That, they're the second worst in the NFL against the wide receiver position.
I love Pittman. I think Pittman, again, is live this matchup. Tennessee, a pass funnel. Obviously, we were expecting Zach Moss to get good results relative to that, but they've been really soft against the pass all year. And Michael Pittman, last week against Tampa Bay, I think that's A very similar matchup to Tennessee, where they're going to get some pressure up front. They're going to do some things schematically that make it a little bit tougher, but they just can't defend the pass downfield very well, and certainly can't defend the pass on throws of under 20 air yards. Let me just pull up the number really fast. But
Yeah.
Indianapolis going against Tennessee here. Tennessee gives up a 75.8% completion rate, so 76 completion rate on throws of under 20 air yards. So that's where Michael Pittman feasts. That's where he gets the most work. Josh Downs as well, same thing. Pittman's price is coming up. Like, I'm very happy to have had some early Pittman best ball shares, because I feel like it's a little bit shocking to see him at 7,100, but I think he's worth it. I think Tennessee as a matchup is worth it. Even if you're not playing Zach Moss, Pittman plus Downs is like the best leverage against Zach Moss. So I think there's two ways to attack that, where you play Pittman with Moss, you play Pittman without Moss, and both ways can work out well. So I think he's a really strong play, and I think showing more touchdown equity more recently too, like great PPR upside, great ceiling in terms of the yardage. So I think he's a really strong play. And again, he would be my second favorite receiver on the week. So me and the chalk, just kissing each other right in the face.
Hey, can I throw out one pivot off of that? Because I think Alec Pierce is in play for probably the first time all season based on his role last week. We saw a 34% target share for Michael Pittman. We saw a 32% target share for Josh Downs, just 16% for Alec Pierce. But he had an 11 ADOT next to Michael Pittman, 7.38. Josh Downs sitting there with 4.25. Basically, Alec Pierce getting targeted a little bit further down the field. And hey, 16% target rate there. If we get anything close to that, which, again, he's had a couple of 14s. If we're going to get him being the guy who has the ADOT into the deeper shots, we get a couple of those to be more catchable, and you could be looking at 3,300 the nuts as a massive pivot off of those two guys. But more than likely what I'll do is I'll just rotate in large field a couple of those 3,300 Alec Pierce shares alongside a Pittman or a Downs and just replace out one of them, so I'm not running into a bunch of dupes with that. But am I an insane person?
I mean, Pierce is tough, man, because I really thought that with the Steichen offense and how it was going to work out, like I felt really confident about Pittman kind of getting a share of both the A.J. Brown role and also the Devontae Smith role. But I thought that, like, with how Pierce played last year, where he was better downfield than he should have been given the QB play they had, I thought he could be like the homeless man's A.J. Brown, like not like very like the most homeless, like, to be clear, but you know, like in the range of outcomes, like here's A.J. Brown, here's Alec Pierce, like it could have been there, and he's just not done that at all. So I'm a little bit gun shy on him. If he works out for the best ball shares, I have him great. But for DFS, I think the case you made is pretty compelling, especially at 3,300. But I think it's tough, man. But that's actually pretty interesting. You go Moss, you go Pierce, you go Tyreek, and you're getting leverage on a lot of different stuff, and you're saving a ton of money. And you might even get McCaffrey in that lineup. Real stars and scrubs potential if you want to go with Alec Pierce.
It's something I thought about yesterday looking at the slate and wanted to bring it up to you mainly because you're sharp, you know your NFL, and it's just one of those things for me, just doing NBA content in conjunction with NFL, where some of the times the data can be a little bit noisy. I don't always have the time to go through the routes, but like 50% easy target rate, catchable target rate, 67%. If we see him get targeted with an 11 ADOT in a spot like this against Tennessee, I think he comes in very, very slept on. So thought that was at least something to talk about from a leverage perspective. But we have a lot more popular wide receivers. Jalen Waddle as well, 7,600 there in that Miami offense going up against Washington. Both of the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers here, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. I mean, it's just nice to see Matt Canada out of there. I think that gives hope to everybody. And now you're getting them at a low price point. Them, Pat Freiermuth will obviously talk about at the tight end position coming off of last week. And lots of other pieces here in this mid-range, guys between 10 and 15%. Who kind of stands out to you in this range?
You bring up Pickens, like I really wish it were a better outlay for him. Former Stochastic alum, Kyle Dvorak tweeted out something which hurt me a little bit. The splits of Pickens with Deontay Johnson on the field versus Deontay Johnson off. It's a 7 PPR point difference. Like Pickens is like a legit wide receiver one without Deontay, and then Deontay comes in and they both just kind of get caught in the muck. But I think relative to the matchup, especially if you're not playing the running backs, or I guess even if you are, I think Pickett stacks are viable. I think you're also getting direct leverage on Freiermuth, who's obviously coming off the big chalk day. So if Pickens goes off, Freiermuth comes down. If Johnson goes off, Freiermuth comes down. I think that's sort of the way that I would view that. So I think they have some merits. Besides them, I think Amon-Ra's in kind of interesting spot if New Orleans can be competitive. I do like Amon-Ra. I feel like Gibbs is kind of hurting him a little bit because Amon-Ra's feasted off of those kind of close to the line of scrimmage targets, whereas ADOT was under 7. He's now getting a little bit deeper downfield because Gibbs is taking some of the flat away. But like Gibbs is still out there taking, 4 to 6 targets, 4 to 8 targets, I guess, at a high end potentially away. That's not great for Amon-Ra, but it's a tournament play. Cheaper price tag than both Keenan Allen and Tyreek Hill. I think he makes sense. And AJ Brown, maybe. I don't know. I feel like AJ Brown is hurt by having Dallas Goedert out. We've seen a lot of targets going Devontae Smith's way. And it's almost been a reminder that, like, yeah, Devontae Smith should be a 1B instead of just the number 2 to AJ Brown's number 1, like it was last year. I think that was when Philly was the most fun offense. But Brown at under 10% ownership, like we know he's got slate breaking upside. I would say he and Amon-Ra make the most game theory sense to me because they could put up 40, and then they're also cheaper than Tyreek and Allen. And I think that's maybe something that could help you leave the field.
I mean, the Chiefs kind of sold out to stop AJ Brown. Buffalo, they did a pretty good job. Some of it was weather. Some of it was, just Devonta Smith was wide open in a couple of those spots and hard to get away from. AJ Brown ran as hot as humanly could be. Going up against San Francisco, we'll see kind of where that ownership lands, 8.2%. I think that's just one that we're going to have to pay a lot of attention to, considering Miami, a quarter of the time, they're going to be the top stack in this spot on a slate like this, according to our top stacks tool. Pretty wild. But Philadelphia sitting there at second, slightly ahead of Houston. And I want to talk Houston because the thing that's the most glaring to me on this slate is the Houston ownership going up against Denver. And you brought it up. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, 6,800, 7,400. If Denver's defense has been more matchup positive rather than like just flat out, I mean, what in the absolute world are we looking at seeing sub 8% for Nico and Tank Dell? Tank Dell was one play, one bad motion call from the ref, just a ticky-tack call away from smashing that slate last week. And now we get him at 7%. Now we get Nico Collins at 7%. I don't give a shit about their price tags. I am going to find lots of room for these guys in tournament, well under their optimal rates. How do you feel about the Houston passing attack against Denver?
I mean, I love Houston. Again, I've been chasing this Denver defense for about 5 weeks now since the Jordan Love game where that went.
I'm joining you this week.
Yeah, and I think this is the week. Like I know it's tough to say that because people to see the results, and I get it. Like Denver on 20 points, 25 points. They're not giving up the same amount of points they were earlier in the year, but like the metrics haven't gotten better for them. The underlying metrics, the EPA metrics are not good. Denver's still positive EPA per pass allowed, positive EPA per dropback allowed, 0.02 and 0.03 respectively, 0.02 EPA per rush. Any positive rush allowed in terms of EPA metrics is a positive thing because EPA's expected points added, it's inherently less effective to run the ball. So seeing that be a positive, you can get there for Singletary as well, having most of the workload for with Pierce coming back, but it's still 390 yards per game that Denver's defense is going up, and we're not in Denver. That's another big part of it, that a lot of these games have been in Denver as well. So I think Houston is very live. I hate paying 8,100 for CJ Stroud. I think it's a very tough price to stomach for him, and the whole stack with him and Tank and Nico is going to be pretty pricey, but Schultz also pretty pricey, but 5K at tight end. I think a QB +2, QB +3 is in play. Like they can really put it on Denver if they want. And 25.5 implied points for Houston is a little bit on the higher side for what they're usually getting. So I think it aligns well. I'm with you. I worry about the Fields ownership of Tank because they seem to go to Tank no matter where he is. Like he was 33% owned last week, even though that was not where ownership anywhere had him because they just can't anticipate the public loving this guy that much. But Tank is, bootleg Tyreek, I think, in some ways. We're even using him similarly in some plays now, including the big play that Eric talked about that got called back. So I like them a lot. I think Houston is definitely a stack that I would trust this week. But, there's a lot of ways you can go.
Give me some Noah Brown, too, 4,500 if he plays, if he suits up. That would be nice to get him instead of dusty old Robert Woods out there for damn sure. Wanted to highlight star centerfold that one because I think if the slate started now, that would probably be the team that I would have an egregious amount of. And I was a noted hater of CJ Stroud coming in. It's hard not to because everybody kind of hated Ohio State quarterbacks coming into the NFL. And I just kind of felt like one of the little lemmings who maybe didn't see that CJ Stroud had this kind of potential. But my God, could not be more wrong and could not be more happy to be wrong because he's been really fun to watch.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, the thing that jumped out to me from college for him was that, like, he did create value. And this is where the EPA metrics, I think, matter is like he was adding value at throws under 10 yards, throws 10 to 20, throws +20. And like when guys do that, and it's not just a system thing, like Bryce Young was kind of a lot of yak plays were help driving his value. CJ Stroud is making these guys good. And I know they have a lot of talent there. They've had a lot of talent for years now. But I think that CJ Stroud's a special guy. And he's the combination of it all is like so much fun to watch. Like they're probably, would you agree that they're like the most fun team? Miami is probably still the most fun, but they're like top 3 fun, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think some people, because Miami was fun last year, maybe they're tired of it this year. I think Houston's the new hot chick in town. Like she just moved from a neighboring town to the city and she's wearing short skirts and you really like what you see because, well, it's just different. It's built different, son. And it's a lot of fun. you don't think you have a chance, but then all of a sudden she's really fun at the bar. You're hanging out, you're chatting. You're like, oh shit, she knows ball too. This is a joke. And then you fall in love and then you're married. And then maybe it gets a little bit worse from time to time because you start looking in the rear view and you see, oh man, I could have been with so many other girls. But at the same time, Houston, it has a special place in your heart.
Oh yeah, I love it when we talk sexy about the ladies. That's where I really thrive, is talking lasciviously about the gals out there. But these Houston Texans, quite the saucy game for sure.
Why did you go to like Jewish grandmother at the end of that?
I think it's more like a Harley Quinn thing where it's like, oh, Mr. J.
Oh, I can't even be mad. All right. Well, there's a lot of unowned wide receivers here on this slate. Adam Thielen, the price is starting to come down to a place in 6,600. Thanks a lot for buying high against Tennessee last week. That didn't go well. Not well at all. Cortland Sutton, I think, will be a popular run back option, 5,400, but I don't completely hate the idea of a 4,700 Jerry Jeudy if he ends up suiting out. If he sits, we could be looking at Denver value. Can we please unleash Marvin Mims one time, although he was limited in practice as well? That would be an enjoyable experience for me. Or probably going to end up being miserable because Russell Wilson doesn't target him. But there's a lot of unowned wide receivers here sitting sub 10% that we could definitely take some shots on. I think my favorite is probably Deebo Samuel, 6,200, going up against this Philadelphia or this Philadelphia secondary that just, they got to prove it to me, man. I do not believe in Philadelphia's defense whatsoever. If they want to be a Super Bowl contender, show it to me here against Deebo and Brandon Ayuk, and maybe I'll start to believe. But I really like getting to San Francisco pieces. Probably not going to go with the Purdy stack. I think that he'll end up being popular. I think he's the third highest owned quarterback on this slate. But what are you kind of seeing sub 10% in the ownership department to round out wide receiver?
I did see Thielen's name and thought that was kind of interesting. I do feel like with Frank Reich retaking the play calling duties that we didn't see the outlier day for Adam Thielen. And now that he's fired, I just don't think it gets better. Like, I kind of personally believe that Adam Thielen, now we're seeing that it's not about their will to get in the ball. We're now seeing that he's an old guy. And as you get further in the year for an older guy, it's like, they just can't keep it up. No pun intended, but they can't keep it going. Both Eric and Jordan's eyes lit up as we say, keep it up. But I hope he can keep it up for his sake.
Keep it up, daddy.
Performance-wise, yeah.
Jordan hates it when I say daddy on shows. Hi, daddy.
So for Adam Thielen, I kind of feel like maybe the best games were in the past. I could take in flyers on him, but I think the trajectory he's on right now is more of a reflection on what we thought he was going to be heading into the year. Then we kind of had the dead cat bounce for a guy being, healthy to start the year, and then he just comes back down to earth because the volume's decreasing a little bit. So I worry about that. And frankly, too, if I were the Carolina Panthers right now, it's a special teams guy who's coaching the team. I would try somebody else besides Thielen to feed the ball to see what you have in the future. Like, give Mingo the ball, even though he's not the most competent. I'd put Terrace Marshall back in the mix. I know he hasn't been great this year. He was great last year. Either way, though, Thielen, I kind of think the best days are done for him. Brandon Ayuk, I'm intrigued by. I know you mentioned Deebo in the same matchup. Ayuk at 7,200, a little bit pricier. Ayuk, we know, like in these kind of matchups, he's the guy who gets open versus everybody. So Philly, not the secondary they had last year for sure. A lot of guys regressing, a lot of guys getting worse. But I think Ayuk in that kind of spot where it is competitive, where you don't necessarily need to have him getting big plays, then the game's over and he can't do anything else. I think in this spot, like, it could be an Ayuk ceiling spot. So him at 7,200, under 10%, I think it'd be the one that jumps out. And last but not least, A.T. Perry, 3,300. Very talented guy coming out of Wake Forest, like what he's been doing so far. I do think we would like to see Olave out for him to have like a really secure role. And even then, you do have Kamara and Taysom Hill breathing down his neck. But for that value, for a guy who's a big body dude who can go up and get some jump balls, we saw the play against with Jameis Winston a couple of weeks ago where Jameis threw it across the field. A.T. Perry fully made that play himself. I think Perry at 3,300 is probably a nice value play, and you could definitely like build a value wide receiver lineup and hope to get the upside, especially if Mims does get more routes. He's also 3,300.
I think it's so unfun that Derek Carr is the quarterback of New Orleans, because I would love to see Olave and A.T. Perry with Jameis Winston. And yeah, that throw against my Vikings, wasn't it it was against the Vikings, wasn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, he threw it literally, he was like at the 2-yard line, goes left, rolls right, throws it a jump ball for A.T. Perry, and it's just like, hey, go get this, sir. And then he does. Probably something there where familiarity, just being on the second unit there in practice. But A.T. Perry, really enjoyable stuff that I like that shout out at 3,300. A Detroit secondary, they're not good. I mean, we're seeing Jordan Love carve them up on Thanksgiving like turkey. It was beautiful, but Actually not beautiful because I hate both teams. And if they could have tied, that would have been the best result for my Viking fandom. But I'm looking at one last spot, and I just want to get your opinion because I think this is the last real thing I want to talk about wide receiver because I'm probably going to lose all validity after this. Marquise Brown, Michael Wilson, Trey McBride, I think all might be in jeopardy considering it's on the road in a game that doesn't matter going up against Pittsburgh. Greg Dortch could end up getting tons and tons and tons of ownership come Sunday based on what his perceived role is. And in some of these spots, he's been a target monster, somebody who can beat man coverage, can be somebody who's wide open, and ended up being a little bit more popular than I anticipated last week. Was surprised to see people get onto him here. I suppose saw the box score week 11 against Houston and said, oh, let's run that back. He ends up getting the touchdown to salvage. Not really great targets there. 9 targets for 3 catches, but that touchdown salvaged. I'm looking at Rondale Moore at 3,400. He's a kid out of Purdue who can do things from the line of scrimmage, catch balls and just can be completely yak, can go nuts in the rushing attack as well from time to time on some end arounds. Feel like a 1% Rondale Moore if Greg Dortch ends up getting steamed up. He's already at 5.2% and could be the only wide receiver out there. What do you think about that ridiculous call to get it over with?
I think it makes some sense. I mean, so like what you mentioned about the Cardinals, and I think the injury report thing that you highlighted might be more important than it might seem, because this has been why I didn't want to take Kyler Murray in best ball. Was my fear was that he would be out the first 8 to 10 weeks, and that ended up being the case. Then he comes out there and it's like, okay, we've showed he's healthy enough. So if we keep him, great, we know what we have. If we trade him, we now put some stuff on film and show that he's still the same Kyler. And I think they've proven that. So I kind of worry at some point, and it maybe won't be this week, but Arizona shouldn't be playing. Like, they shouldn't be playing their guys right now. They should be tanking for the pick. It's going to help them decide the future of the franchise. But I think like in that case, like a Rondale Moore probably safe because he's playing for a next contract, I think at this point, or, an opportunity moving forward. He hasn't gotten the biggest one. And it is a Pittsburgh team that blitzes at a high rate. We're talking about a 36% blitz rate. How do you beat the blitz? You attack guys going into that space that the blitzer's coming from. And Rondale Moore is the low ADOT guy who can do that. So especially if you saw McBride somehow be out, I presume he'll be a go because it's early in the week. But if you saw like McBride out, like Rondale Moore is the low ADOT target you go to. So I could see it. We've seen him break big plays as well. And then you have the parts of like maybe Marquise Brown snap share starts to come down a little bit. So 3,400 again, I think there's a compelling case to make some lineups with like a few guys under 4K because there are a few viable plays and probably more than usual under 4K this week.
That there are. Guys, smash that like button here. We got Spags, we got Puppet Lindquist, and we got myself hanging out, bringing you the Thursday goods, that's for sure. Really enjoy talking football with my guy. Miss talking sports with my guys, so really enjoyable. If not for you guys, then for me. This is a selfish show, and I feel good about it. But we're going to head to tight end here. But first, check out Odd Shopper. Friends, Stochastic Odd Shopper, we are one. One is us. We're fantastic stuff here. And Odd Shopper just slashed all the prices across the board. $14.95 for a week to try it out. The Discord alone, to be able to get my picks on the daily, we're talking $20. Now you're getting the tools, the most important part of the equation, in addition to the Discord for $15. $14.95 for a week. We're talking $50 there for a month. Unbelievable value that you have there if you're in a legal betting state. If you're in a non-legal betting state, they have fantasy optimizers to help you put together the best prize picks cards. That's our sponsor here of the program. I don't know why I pointed to my TV. There's nothing on there, but just a habit, I suppose. Guys, check out everything over at Odd Shopper. Again, $14.95. Check out oddshopper.com. Incredible value there. Fantasy optimizer there for the prize picks underdog streets. You have the opportunity to bet positive expected value plays that jump to the top of the board in every single sport, NBA, MLB, NFL, everything across the board. Amazing tool that shows you a market-based approach based on what Sharp Sportsbook are doing. And you're able to bet here on your DraftKings, your FanDuels, your BetMGMs, your Caesars, and find the best value available every single time. Great stuff. What, Jordan Klein? What's so funny? Don't laugh at me. I saw it. Why? What did I do? I feel like I'm doing a great job over here. No. Anyway, check out Odd Shopper. Expected win percentage and XBet percentage and amazing things. So check it all out. Really great stuff. Kenny Pickett stacks. That's where. Whoa, God. I don't know if I have the balls for such things. I don't know. We'll find out. But let's talk tight end here first. Then we'll talk top stacks and we'll get the heck up out of here. But David Njoku's the most popular play on the slate. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, I think too, if Joe Flacco starts, I don't know that that's necessarily correct because, again, part of the reason that backup QBs target these guys is because they can't get the ball downfield. And Njoku's been targeted heavily by DTR, who's afraid to get the ball downfield to Amari Cooper, or, is being coached out of doing it because he might have enough of an arm based on what he did at UCLA. PJ Walker, though, same thing. Njoku's cheap, but I think the situation changes enough here where I think Joe Flacco is going to be bombing in this one because that's what he did the last time he started as a Jets QB. I think he gets it downfield to Amari Cooper, maybe to, I don't know, to Elijah Moore. Can Elijah Moore get downfield? I just don't think it's an Njoku layup spot. So it's not that much ownership, though. 13% is not great. Durham Smythe is projected for 7% ownership. That's
Smythe me, almighty Smither.
He has been an awful pick in best ball. I thought he would get like one of those days where he's like, 2 touchdowns because they're covering Tyreek. Nope. Durham Smythe is just out there hanging out.
Hey, Miami's a good spot to be hanging out, especially on this football team. Yes, coach, I will go block, sir. Yes, sir. I don't need to catch footballs, even though that's all I'm good at, sir. Very strange. Very strange Durham Smythe usage. For him to be 2,500 in a Miami offense, I think it makes sense that he's getting steamed up. I will probably have 0. I can't remember what week it was that I played like nearly 100% of him. I think it was that Denver game where they scored 70, and I think he had 2.
Yeah, he came up a lot in the Sims, which, was the right play in hindsight because he put up a shitload of points, but boy, he was not part of it.
70 points as a team. I think he had 2.5. There we go. I was right. Oh my God, that was painful. That was pain and suffering personified. But we got Trey McBride. He was out of practice Wednesday, was still working out on the side for whatever that's worth. Logan Thomas there, 3,600 as a run back option for Miami. I think he ends up being the guy who's probably the most popular play on the slate if it's a Joe Flacco starting there for Cleveland. 3,600 Logan Thomas, I bet gets steamed if I had a guess. And that, friends, leads me to flipping the build conversation, and that is George Kittle. 6,200. There are some splits playing alongside Deebo Samuel, and they have not necessarily mattered since coming off of the IR for one Deebo here. Yeah, only 4.9 against Seattle, but that was a game script where, San Francisco was able to do whatever they wanted to against Seattle. You're going to see these muted games of 5 or 6 from George Kittle, but you're also going to run into 20 and 25, of which I don't think there's a ton of on this slate. You don't have Mark Andrews for the season, and you don't have Baltimore in this slate, period. But you also don't have, why am I blanking? Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift's boyfriend, isn't playing football here on this slate either. George Kittle at 6,200 might be my favorite tournament tight end. How do you feel about paying up here and flipping the build?
I don't know. So I agree with Kittle is the elite tight end everybody kind of forgets about in every format of fantasy football. So I'm with you on that theoretically. A little tough for me to pay 6,200 on this slate, which might make him more of a tournament play because you are, like you mentioned, you're flipping the build with that. But if you are giving 6,200 to tight end, you're not getting a lot of the studs unless you're going real cheap at some other spots. But again, in a week where everybody's going to be going to 4,100, 4,900, 3,600, if they're playing Durham Smythe at 2,500, Kittle at 6,200 could actually give you a score that matters. And if those guys bust and Kittle puts up 30, let alone 20, I think those are probably good enough spots for him that he could actually win you a tournament. So I get the logic for it. Kittle in a high leverage spot. I personally think that Ayuk gets going a little bit more here. But I think they're all equally valid plays because Philadelphia's defense is kind of weak everywhere across the board. There isn't one spot you attack to get results.
The rest of the tight end board this week is just a little bit insane to me. Pat Freiermuth, 4,300 after being nearly the min for all season, it would seem. Yeah, he came off the IR, week 11. So he was out for 7 weeks leading into that. And then 24 because 11 targets on 9 catches. Wowzer. Ridiculous role for him at 4,300. Maybe he moves up the board against Arizona. I would presume he would, although Arizona, they've been the best team in the league against tight ends, basically scheming against tight ends all season long. I don't know. I kind of don't give a shit. Give me Pat Freiermuth at this kind of ownership, right?
Yeah, I think he gets steamed up. I think people see that box score and think it's because of the offensive coordinator / play caller changes. Both of them happen. So I think people will chase Freiermuth. If I had to guess, I think he gets closer to the Njoku McBride range when we actually flip the cards. But projection-wise, I don't think he'll grade out that way. So if I had to guess, I think the Sims and the ownership projections won't push you towards Freiermuth, but I think casual players will go, oh, this is a new meta. He's the guy. And they might be right. I think they're probably wrong, but I think Freiermuth at 4,300 gets chased up would be my guess.
Yeah. I appreciate Charles Moran also getting every single stream elements over the course. I didn't see that he just went on a stream elements run there in YouTube chat. Always appreciate that. What would Sean V do? Sean V would probably, I don't know. I bet Sean V doesn't even play DFS, so it is what it is. Apparently he's into it though, so gotta be careful. Gotta be careful what I say and what I do. Anywho, any tight ends that you've got your eye on? Because I think for me this week, I'll be throwing some darts at the dartboard and scattershotting around everything here. I don't think anybody is just like a standout play. Obviously, George Kittle, I'm pulling because I want to target Philadelphia. Not even necessarily with Brock Purdy because of his ownership, but what are you planning to do here at tight end? Anybody you want to be rostering above the field?
I think I talked about Dalton Schultz a little bit ago.
Yeah.
I think he stands out to me as like similar kind of thesis of Kittle, where you're getting a little bit away from the price point and a guy that has some upside, and you're also getting leverage against the Texan stack that I think will be decently owned. So I like Schultz. Laporta, we know the upside is always there. The matchup is kind of whatever, but 5% ownership for Laporta. We know he's got 20 fantasy point upside, so he could be another guy that wins the week at a slightly different price point. But I think these are the guys that are it. It's not a great tight end week where I think Njoku's the chalk just out of the sheer inertia of the last few weeks at an okay price point. You could really play any of these guys, and I think you're not going to find a ton of ownership. I think it'll be pretty spread out. Besides Freiermuth, who I think gets closer to 10 to 15.
But Freiermuth, yeah, definitely going to be. And I was hoping Dallas Goedert might be a thing at 4,800. Alas, didn't practice Wednesday. Doesn't sound like he's going to be playing football. That is a bummer for me and for my best ball teams. That is for sure the pride of South Dakota State, Dallas frickin' Goedert. Smash the like button, everybody. We're about to get out of here in 2 seconds. But first, we got to talk our top stacks here. We're going to pull up the top stacks tool with the help of one Jordan Klein here, and we're going to finish out this program like we always do. That is by giving you our favorite popular stack and our favorite under-owned stack, giving you a little bit of reasoning and logic, something that Puppet Lindquist doesn't always have, but I know Chris Spags does every single time. My friend, who are you looking at here in terms of popular stacks? We've got Miami, 24.3%, hard to get away from, in my opinion. Philadelphia, Houston, who I'm in love with, and the Chargers sitting there at 8.2%. Any of these tickle your fancy?
I would say Houston is definitely going to be one of my favorites. I mean, I like Miami as well, at least the theory of Miami. The price point's a little bit tough for Tua. Tua doesn't run, and we haven't seen the explosive ceiling, but I would say he would be right there. I would say for my wild card one, I think Pittsburgh is kind of an interesting concept to go to just because of the matchup against Arizona. And if people are wrong about it being a Freiermuth offense, then you're going to get some leverage by going to an actual Pickett stack with maybe one of the running backs or just Johnson and Pickens. So I think for me, it would be Miami, Houston, Pittsburgh. And it's a broad spectrum of stacks, but I think that's what I would say jump out for different reasons.
Yeah, San Francisco with just a 5.3% top stack percentage. It sounds incorrect to me, but I think it makes sense when you think about how expensive a lot of those pass catchers are. What McCaffrey can do to not the word isn't vulture, because Christian McCaffrey should be getting the football in those kind of spots, and it's just that so much of the output from a touchdown perspective goes through him, and he's 9 freaking K, so he's going to be popular as a piece there. So I'm probably not going to go to him. I'm just going to go right back to running it with Gardner Minshew. You talked about having Indy exposure there, 5.3%. I don't really think that that's all that difficult to get to. And I keep going back to this Alec Pierce 3,300 thing. There's a part of me that thinks that he's going to go very, very, very overlooked on this slate. He should probably, based on what he's done all season long. But if Pittman downs, if everybody's going to get targeted there, Alec Pierce, there's going to be a big play eventually for him. He has 0 touchdowns on the season. All it takes is that one big play, and he's going to be that guy. Multiple games this season, I guess 38-yard catch there in week 4 against the Rams. He had a couple of deep targets there against Cleveland and New Orleans, had one that he just missed there. Those box scores could look very different to people, and at 3,300 against this Tennessee secondary, as dogs, give me Indy in this spot. My friend, Chris Spags. This was so fun today, my friend. Any final words for the people? Give them all of the socials and all of the things so that they can find you and they can watch you and enjoy you the same way I do.
Yeah, so go check me out on Splash Play right after this. Gonna be doing a showdown video where I do basically hand build the lineup, look at the stochastic data, look at the sims, and just run through the process of what actually building lineups looks like. So that'll be coming up right after the stream. So at Splash Play Pod on YouTube, or just search Splash Play, and you'll find me there in a mere moment. Besides that, follow me at Chris Spags and check out my app, Probably app. We're not promoting it too much here because I don't know if we're okay with that yet, but it is my startup here that has betting data using market data as opposed to the ROI projection based data that is the odd shopper thing. So I think there are tools that go hand in hand. But that'd be my big push. Check it out probably, and I'm doing content for it. But you'll see me around here. I'll be back tomorrow with Greg. So I get the full experience. I get you one day, get Greg the other day. I feel like I'm living the dream here of the stochastic streams.
Yeah, just a rotating, never-ending assembly line. Oh, we're not going to go there actually, because I'm gonna be a nice kid in Vegas. I'm gonna be so orderly and gentlemanly and all of those things. It'll be enjoyable. Gonna go watch some football. Quack quack, go Ducks, good stuff. But Spags, thank you so much for
quack 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 quack. Taco Tuesday. Taco Tuesday.
Oh fuck me!
Look at my crotch. Taco Tuesday.
There you go. Jordan Klein, thank you. Let's get the heck up out of here. Time to leave. Turn the camera off. Turn them off.